High above the streets of New York, perched on the cornices of historic landmarks, you will see the same face staring back at you. These figures are everywhere, standing guard over public plazas and resting in the quiet courtyards of the city's elite mansions. Despite being carved by dozens of different sculptors across various decades, these statues share a singular, hauntingly consistent likeness. This is Audrey Munson. In the early 20th century, she was the most famous model in America, a woman who effectively served as the physical template for the nation's public art. But there is a disturbing gap in her history. The woman who was once the most visually reproduced person in the country spent her final 64 years locked inside an asylum, eventually buried in a grave without a name. Her story began in 1909, when a teenage Audrey moved to New York City with her mother, hoping to find a career on the Broadway stage. Her career changed on a sidewalk. While shopping on Fifth Avenue, she was spotted by a photographer who recognized her potential and introduced her to the city's leading circle of sculptors. She quickly became the industry standard. By 1913, she was posing for Civic fame, the massive gilded figure commissioned for the top of the Manhattan Municipal Building. Standing 25 feet tall, it remains the second largest female statue in the city, trailing only the Statue of Liberty in scale. Her fame went national in 1915, when she was selected to model for 3/5 of all the statuary at the Panama Pacific International Exposition in San Francisco. By her early 20s, Audrey had achieved a strange form of immortality. She wasn't just a model, she was a national commodity, whose features were cast in bronze and stone across the entire country. In 1919, that momentum came to a sudden halt. Audrey and her mother were living in a boarding house owned by an elderly doctor named Walter Wilkins. Wilkins became obsessed with Audrey. In a delusional attempt to be with her, he murdered his own wife, sparking one of the biggest tabloid scandals of the decade. Audrey was never charged with a crime, but when she and her mother fled to Canada during the investigation, the public assumed she was involved. Though Wilkins was eventually convicted, the damage was done. The scandal made Audrey toxic to the very art world that had relied on her for a decade, ending her modeling career overnight. The financial collapse was total. By 1920, the woman who had been the face of Civic fame was working as a ticket taker in Syracuse, while her mother sold kitchen utensils door to door. Audrey's mental health began to spiral alongside her finances. She became consumed by paranoia, convinced that a conspiracy was responsible for her downfall. This paranoia took a dark public turn. She began writing to Congress, claiming that Jewish millionaires were persecuting her and demanding legal protection from these imagined enemies. Her life became a series of legal battles and personal crises. She was arrested on morals charges for her film roles, and in 1922, she attempted to take her own life. The breaking point came in 1931. On her 40th birthday, following a petition from her mother, Audrey was committed to the St. Lawrence State Hospital for the Insane. The milestone that should have marked the middle of her life instead marked its conclusion in the eyes of the public. The American Venus was officially removed from society. Audrey remained in that institution for the next 64 years. Following her mother's death, she spent 2 full decades without a single recorded visitor. Modern historians are now re-examining this long exile. They question if Audrey was strictly a victim of mental illness, or if her commitment was partially a way to silence a woman who had become an embarrassment to the art world. This chart highlights the massive financial gap between the value of the sculptures and the meager wages paid to models like Audrey. She increasingly argued models were undervalued by the sculptures, growing wealthy off their bodies. Reconciling this advocacy with her later delusions and suicide attempts is difficult. Her 64-year stay in the asylum suggests a complex medical reality. Ultimately, her life serves as a reminder of the industry's failure. It celebrated her physical form while showing almost no interest in the living human being who occupied it. When Audrey died in 1996 at age 104, she was buried in a grave that remained unmarked for 20 years, until a public fundraising effort finally provided a headstone in 2016. But her real monuments are much harder to ignore. They still loom over the streets of Manhattan, watching the city from high above. These statues aren't just art. They are the permanent, silent observers of the woman who gave them her face, only to be broken by the city she helped build.